There's a silence that most people run from. It creeps in when the noise stops, when conversations fade and the distractions disappear. You feel it settle around you, the quiet, the stillness, the emptiness. We call it loneliness, and we fear it like a shadow. But what if this fear is misplaced? What if loneliness isn't the enemy, but a gift waiting to be unwrapped? The Stoics said so. They saw being alone not as a misfortune, but as a precious opportunity. An opportunity to grow, to strengthen, to find something deeper within. In our modern world, loneliness often wears a cloak of shame. It's something to hide from, to fix, to avoid at all costs. We fill the silence with noise, endless scrolling, constant talking, busyness without pause. Because being alone feels like a failure, a lack, a void. Yet the Stoics teach us differently. They tell us that solitude is not emptiness but fullness, a fullness of self, of reflection, of clarity. They teach that solitude is a gift, a chance to meet yourself honestly, to look inward without distraction, to discover the strength beneath the surface. Loneliness, then, is not a punishment but a passage, a doorway through which you step to find resilience, to build a fortress not of stone, but of character. Think of the fear that grips many when they first find themselves alone with their thoughts. It's uncomfortable, it's raw, but this discomfort is the beginning. It teaches you that you can survive your own company. More than survive, you can thrive in it. The Stoics remind us that the greatest power is self-mastery. And self-mastery begins with being comfortable alone. When you do not rely on others to define your worth. When you can sit with yourself without fleeing. You begin to unlock a freedom few ever taste. The fear of loneliness is natural. It signals our deep need for connection. But connection to others is not the only connection that matters. There is a connection to yourself that is just as crucial. One that grounds you, centers you, and empowers you. Imagine solitude not as isolation, but as a sanctuary. A place where you can breathe without expectations. Where your thoughts are your own. Where you can listen to the quiet voice beneath the noise. This is the foundation of the Stoic perspective. Solitude is the soil from which inner strength grows. It is the space where you cultivate resilience. Where you prepare to face life's storms with calm. You don't have to be alone to feel lonely. And you don't have to fear being alone. The difference lies in how you meet the silence. With resistance, or with openness. The Stoics chose openness. They embraced solitude as a teacher, harsh but wise. A companion that reveals the contours of their soul. They saw that being alone is not a loss, but a gain. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, often reflected on the value of retreat. Not as escape, but as renewal. He wrote about withdrawing from the noise to reconnect with what truly matters. Seneca, too, spoke of solitude as a balm for the restless mind. He advised that by sitting quietly with ourselves, we learn patience and clarity. This ancient wisdom calls you now to pause, to welcome the quiet not as emptiness, but as possibility. There is a profound shift when you stop running from loneliness. You begin to see it as a gift, a rare chance to grow beyond the superficial, to discover who you truly are beneath the roles and masks. Loneliness becomes strength, not because it is easy, but because it is honest, because it demands you face yourself without distraction, without escape. There's a silence that most people run from, but you are learning to stay, to listen, to be. And in that stillness, something changes. You begin to build a fortress of calm, a sanctuary of inner peace, a wellspring of resilience. The Stoics said that it is not what happens to us, but how we respond, that shapes our lives. Solitude is the training ground for this response. It teaches you to stand firm when the world shakes. You begin to understand that being alone is not loneliness. It is a choice, a gift. So when the silence comes, as it will, do not run. Do not fill the space with noise. Sit with it. Breathe into it. In time, you find yourself not fearing the quiet, but craving it. Because in that quiet, you meet the strongest part of yourself. The solitude that once frightened you becomes the foundation of your strength. And that is where true freedom begins. You begin to notice something else about solitude. It's not just being alone. It's a practice, a deliberate turning inward. The Stoics called it self-sufficiency, autarkia, a word that means relying first and foremost on yourself. In a world that constantly pulls your attention outward, the Stoics teach you to find strength inside, not depending on applause, approval, or presence of others, but finding a wellspring of calm within. Epictetus said, "Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourself." This is the heart of their message. Being alone becomes a choice, a space where you cultivate wisdom. There is a difference between being physically alone and feeling lonely. One is presence, the other absence. Being alone is the state of your body. Feeling lonely is the state of your mind. The Stoics show you how to master this difference. They teach that solitude is not a punishment or a void. It is a fertile ground for growth, a chance to sharpen your mind and steady your emotions. Seneca urged his students to welcome solitude. To be everywhere is to be nowhere, he said, meaning scattered attention loses power. Solitude gathers your focus. It centers your soul. When you choose solitude, you choose to stop seeking validation outside yourself. You begin to cultivate a relationship with your own mind, to observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment, to become the master of your inner world. This is not always easy. Our minds are trained to seek connection, to avoid silence. But the Stoics remind you that true freedom comes from independence, from being anchored inside, no matter what happens outside. Epictetus's teachings emphasize that external things are beyond your control, but your attitude, your responses, your character, these are yours to govern. Solitude is the classroom where you practice this governance. Imagine sitting alone with your thoughts. No distractions, no expectations, just you, fully present. This is not loneliness. It is presence. Presence with yourself is a radical act. It means you are no longer fleeing discomfort, no longer needing constant stimulation. You become your own companion. When you can be alone without needing others to fill the space, you begin to taste a rare freedom, one that the Stoics revered. Seneca's letters remind you that solitude is the path to wisdom. He wrote, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach." You don't have to search outside. Your own mind holds treasures. Being alone teaches you to listen deeply to yourself, to separate passing thoughts from your true values, to distinguish transient emotions from enduring character. This process of self-reliance is the essence of Stoic practice. It reveals that solitude is not emptiness, but fullness, not weakness, but strength. You begin to see solitude as a teacher. It shows you where your mind wanders. It exposes fears and desires. It invites you to choose what is worthy of your attention. The Stoics practice daily exercises to deepen this inner mastery, journaling their thoughts, reflecting on their actions, meditating on impermanence. These were not mere habits, but tools for cultivating self-sufficiency. When you engage with these practices in solitude, you build resilience. You train yourself to respond rather than react, to act with reason rather than impulse. The key is that solitude is a choice. You decide to step away from the crowd, to face yourself honestly, to cultivate a mind that is steady and clear. This choice transforms solitude from a fearful state into a powerful practice. Each moment alone becomes an opportunity, an invitation to grow stronger. The Stoics teach that your inner world is your true home. No matter where you are, you carry it with you. Solitude helps you clean and strengthen that home. You learn to appreciate your own company, to find joy not in external things, but in the richness of your own mind. This is the foundation of self-reliance. It's a skill that serves you in every aspect of life. When you are strong inside, external circumstances cannot shake you. You become less dependent on others for your happiness. Imagine the freedom in that, to be able to stand alone without fear, to be content in your own presence. This is not isolation. It is autonomy. The Stoics remind you that this autonomy is the root of true freedom. Freedom from the need for constant approval, from anxiety about others' opinions. Freedom to be yourself fully. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Mastery begins with solitude. When you embrace solitude as a practice of self-reliance, you begin to unlock the door to wisdom. You begin to see that you are enough. This is the gift of solitude the Stoics offer. Not loneliness as a curse, but solitude as a choice, a path to inner strength. So when you find yourself alone, do not despair. Choose to be present. Choose to turn inward. In that space, You begin to master your mind. You cultivate your character. You build a foundation no external force can shake. Solitude becomes your ally, your training ground, your sanctuary. And with each moment alone, you grow stronger, more resilient, more free. You begin to understand that being alone is not a loss. It is a profound gain. The Stoics said it best. It's not the absence of others that matters, but the richness of your own company. This is the heart of their wisdom. Solitude as self-reliance. Solitude as freedom. Solitude as strength. You begin to see that solitude is not merely a theory or idea. It is a practice lived by those who seek wisdom. Look to the great Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus. They did not shy away from solitude. They embraced it. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, often withdrew into quiet moments, not as escape from duty, but as a way to renew his spirit. In the midst of war and turmoil, he wrote his meditations alone, a refuge from chaos, a place to regain clarity. He said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." This is not denial of the world, but mastery of the self within it. Seneca, too, sought solitude intentionally. He retreated from the noise of Rome to his country villa. There, he reflected deeply on life and death, on virtue and wisdom. In his letters, Seneca described solitude as a teacher. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. He understood that solitude offers perspective, a chance to see life in sharper focus. Epictetus, once a slave, found in solitude the power to govern his mind. He taught that external events do not disturb us, only our judgments about them. And solitude is where we learn to change those judgments. These figures show us a path where solitude is not weakness, but strength, where being alone is not isolation, but a sanctuary. They remind us that solitude allows us to maintain equanimity, to face life's challenges without losing balance, to hold steady when the world is unsteady. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In solitude, you learn to meet obstacles within yourself, to transform resistance into growth. Seneca urged, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Solitude reveals these imagined fears. It shines a light on the shadows we carry and offers a chance to release them. The solitude of the Stoics was not loneliness. It was a refuge, a place to recover strength, to prepare to re-enter the world with calm and purpose. They teach that solitude is a source of clarity. When distracted by others, the mind scatters. In solitude, it focuses. You begin to see what truly matters. This clarity builds mental fortitude, a shield against the storms of life, because you have practiced standing firm when alone. The Stoics saw solitude as a necessary counterbalance to the noise of politics, society, and human affairs. It was the wellspring from which they drew patience and wisdom. Their writings, crafted in solitude, continue to guide us. They offer a map for how to live with grace under pressure. Marcus Aurelius said, "Look within. Within is the fountain of goodness." Solitude uncovers this fountain. It is where you find the strength to be good in a chaotic world. Seneca reminded us, "True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future." Solitude teaches presence. It anchors you in the now. Through solitude, these Stoics cultivated resilience. They did not escape reality. They prepared to meet it fully. Their example shows you that solitude is not a burden. It is a refuge, a place to recharge your soul. It is where you gather your thoughts, where you heal your wounds, where you prepare for what comes next. The Stoics chose solitude intentionally, not to avoid life, but to engage with it more wisely. Their solitude was active, not passive, a practice of reflection and renewal. It is a practice you can adopt, to step back from noise, to find your center, to strengthen your character. Solitude becomes a place to reset, to remind yourself of your values, to renew your commitment to virtue. The solitude of these great thinkers teaches you that strength is not only found in action, but in pause, in reflection, in being alone with your mind. This is the paradox of solitude. It is both a retreat and a preparation, a quiet place from which you launch back into the world. Marcus Aurelius's meditations were written as reminders to himself to stay grounded, to live with integrity, to face adversity with courage. Seneca's letters were counsel to his friends, to remind them to cherish solitude, to find wisdom in stillness. Epictetus's teachings were lessons in self-control, to master the mind when no one else is watching. These historical examples show you that solitude is a choice made by those who seek strength. It is a refuge for the wise, a tool for the resilient. When you embrace solitude, you walk in their footsteps. You enter a tradition of strength and wisdom. You begin to see that being alone is not empty. It is full of possibility. The Stoics teach you that solitude is a source of clarity and mental fortitude, a shield against life's chaos. So when you find yourself alone, remember the example of Marcus Aurelius, of Seneca, of Epictetus. They chose solitude not to hide, but to grow, to reflect, to prepare. And in that choice, they found strength, a strength that you, too, can find. Solitude becomes a refuge, a sanctuary, a source of power, not a void to be feared. The Stoics show you that solitude is where the soul finds its footing, a place to stand firm, to cultivate peace, to build resilience. And in this solitude, you begin to meet yourself fully, without distraction, without escape. You begin to see that the greatest strength is born in silence, in stillness, in solitude. Loneliness, when embraced, becomes a powerful catalyst, a forge where your character is shaped and tempered. It teaches you discipline, the courage to face yourself without flinching. The Stoics knew this well. They practiced solitude not to escape, but to grow, to develop self-awareness and emotional resilience. In the quiet moments alone, you begin a journey inward. You confront your thoughts, your fears, your desires. No distractions, no masks. It is here that true self-discipline is born. The discipline to observe your mind, to notice when it wanders into anger, envy, or despair, to gently bring it back to reason. This practice requires bravery. Many avoid loneliness because it reveals what they have hidden from themselves. But the Stoics invite you to sit with your truth, to greet your shadow kindly. Journaling was one of their tools. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations as a dialogue with himself, a way to question, reflect, and realign. This act of writing in solitude sharpens self-awareness. It makes the invisible visible. You begin to see patterns. You begin to understand the roots of your emotions. Meditation, too, was part of their practice. Not the kind you might think of today, but a steady reflection on impermanence, virtue, and control. Epictetus taught to remind yourself daily, this is what I can control, and this is what I cannot. This simple distinction frees you from unnecessary suffering. Loneliness becomes a teacher of freedom. Freedom from attachment to things beyond your power. Freedom to focus on what truly matters, your own thoughts and actions. This clarity leads to emotional resilience. You learn to weather storms within, to remain calm when fear or anger arise. The courage to face yourself honestly grows stronger. You no longer run from discomfort. You meet it with openness. This openness transforms loneliness. It no longer feels like emptiness. It becomes a space of rich possibility. The Stoics called this courage fortitude, a strength that is quiet but unbreakable. Loneliness tests your fortitude. It reveals your weaknesses and your strengths. It demands patience. You begin to see that solitude is a laboratory, a place where you experiment with your mind, where you learn to respond rather than react. This transformation is not immediate. It is a gradual deepening, a daily practice of turning inward. You start to notice changes. Your thoughts become clearer, your emotions more balanced, your actions more deliberate. The Stoics encouraged this ongoing work. Seneca wrote, "Throw me to the wolves, and I will return leading the pack." This fierce resilience comes from mastering solitude. Loneliness becomes an ally, not a foe. You begin to cherish moments alone, because in them, you grow stronger. The courage to face yourself without distraction is the foundation of wisdom. It teaches you to live intentionally, to choose your responses, to cultivate virtue. This is the gift of loneliness, a space to deepen your understanding of who you are, to build the strength to live authentically. You begin to realize that the hardest battles are often fought within, and solitude is where you train. where you prepare to meet those battles with grace. The Stoics teach that without solitude, self-awareness remains shallow. With it, you dive deep. You discover your true nature. This discovery is freeing. It removes the need for external approval. It grounds you in your own values. Loneliness teaches you to be your own guide, your own friend, your own source of strength. The path is not easy. It requires patience and courage, but the rewards are profound. You begin to live with greater clarity, greater peace, greater freedom. In solitude, you find the space to become the person you want to be, not shaped by others' expectations, but by your own reason and virtue. This is the power of loneliness. It transforms you from within. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In solitude, you choose those colors carefully. You practice shaping your mind, choosing courage over fear, wisdom over confusion, calm over turmoil. Loneliness becomes a space of growth, a crucible for your character. The Stoics offer you this challenge: to embrace solitude as a path to inner growth, to welcome loneliness as a teacher. You begin to see that being alone is an invitation, an opportunity to become stronger, wiser, freer. So now, when loneliness comes, do not turn away. Step toward it. Sit with it. Learn from it. In the stillness, you find the courage to face yourself honestly. This courage becomes the foundation of your resilience. Solitude becomes your greatest teacher, your ally on the journey to wisdom. And in this loneliness, you begin to grow, to deepen, to become whole. When you master solitude, something remarkable happens. You begin to engage with the world differently, no longer driven by neediness, no longer seeking validation. The Stoics called this inner freedom, a freedom that flows from being complete within yourself. This freedom allows you to connect authentically, not from a place of dependence, but from a place of genuine presence. Imagine relationships where you are not afraid to be alone, where your worth is not tied to another's approval, where you can listen deeply without needing to fix or control. This is the power of transforming loneliness into a gift. It frees you to be fully yourself with others. The Stoics teach that true strength is not in avoiding loneliness, but in welcoming it, seeing it as an essential part of growth. When you embrace loneliness, you begin to cultivate self-mastery. You stop running from discomfort. You meet life on your own terms. This transformation enriches your interactions. You become less reactive, more patient, more compassionate. The Stoic ideal is to live intentionally, to act according to virtue, not impulse. Solitude prepares you for this. It is in moments alone that you rehearse patience, that you practice kindness toward yourself, that you build the courage to face others honestly. Loneliness becomes a teacher of authenticity. It strips away false needs and reveals your true self. This authenticity deepens your relationships. It allows you to connect without fear, without neediness, with openness and trust. You begin to see that solitude is not separation. It is the foundation for connection. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Solitude helps you become that good person. You learn to be whole on your own, so you can share your wholeness freely. This is the gift loneliness offers, a chance to build a life rooted in inner strength, not dependent on others for happiness, but radiating peace from within. The Stoics teach that the path to freedom is through self-mastery, and self-mastery begins in solitude. You begin to welcome loneliness as a guide, a companion on your journey. It teaches you resilience. It teaches you courage. It teaches you love for yourself and others. This transformation is subtle, gradual, but profound. With each moment alone, you grow stronger, more centered, more free. You begin to live with intention, with purpose, with joy that is not borrowed, but earned. The Stoics remind you that life is short, that distractions are many, that solitude is rare. So cherish it, use it, let it shape you. When loneliness comes, do not fear it. Invite it in, sit with it, learn from it. In doing so, you build a foundation, a strength that no storm can shake. Solitude becomes your source of power, your wellspring of peace, your teacher of freedom. And with this strength, you face the world anew, not as someone who needs others, but as someone who chooses to share. You become a light for others, a steady presence, a a soul at peace. The Stoics said it best: he who is brave is free. True bravery is found in the courage to be alone, to face yourself fully. And in that bravery, you find freedom. So embrace solitude. Welcome loneliness. Turn them into gifts. Because in doing so, you unlock the deepest strength within. You become the person you were meant to be. Whole, free, strong. And that is the greatest gift of all.